Hello and welcome to Creative Walks episode 37. This is Pedro Bonatto, and today I wanted to talk to you about this idea of artworks seen as portals, which is an idea that if you follow this podcast or if you listen to my YouTube videos that I did a few about my sort of like my artist statement last year, I compare regularly this idea that artworks, they are like portals for change, portals into a different world, a world of possibility. There is even a little bit of a mysticism in the way that people have talked about it, but I try to combine the best of those ideas that are ancient and new. And today I wanted to expand a little bit about what I mean by an artwork being like a portal. And I want to do that taking into account not only the super lofty ideas related to art that sometimes can sound exaggerated, but also the very practical things about that understanding that I think will be useful for you. So the way that I think about artworks, they are very much inspired by this quote that it's one of my favorite ones from Dante Alighieri, that is, beauty inspires you to act. That's sort of like paraphrasing, but I can't remember from the top of my head the exact quote, but that's the idea, is that beauty is that thing that inspires you to act. And then I'm sure I'm going to do a full episode about the meaning of beauty and all those things. But for the point of view of what I consider is that you have a piece of artwork, and that can be any kind of artwork. It can be music, it can be a piece of clothing, it can be a beautiful painting or an object, or the drawing that your daughter or son made for you. Like whatever can be considered an artwork, they are, in a sense, a portal. And let's dig a little bit deeper in what the portal means, right? The portal is a transition space between two environments. It's when you leave one place and you enter another one. That's what a door is. The word porta, for example, in Portuguese or Spanish, door is related to the word portal, right? So this also implies another thing, that a portal, it's something that is man-made. You usually don't consider a portal something that is like a natural hole on a rock, for example. Like you could consider that a portal if you think that there is some human element in between, or at least it's understood that way. But usually portals are man-made things. And then on the realm of ideas, portals are the things that transition from one way of understanding into another, or one way of thinking and feeling into another way of thinking and feeling. And in a way, whenever we create artworks, and then whenever we share artworks, or whenever we interact with those things, those beautiful things that inspires us to act, those are the portals. Incidentally, after I came up with this idea, that I'm sure it came from a wealth of a lifetime of exploring the subjects, this is not a new idea, but I just noticed beginning of this year that there is this mathematician, this fascinating guy called Eric Weinstein, that he actually created a podcast called The Portal, and he talks a little bit about this concept as well, and more on his realm, but I think those are very related ideas, and I hope someday for my Wanderings podcast be able to interview him. So, but that's just a side note, just how these ideas are sort of like in the ether, and then you see them manifesting with people they really admire, and that's very encouraging. But anyway, so you go from this idea that a portal is something that takes you on a transition, or at least invites you or points you, well, this is where you're going to be able to go from here to there, right? And I think, and at least these days, that I've been thinking a lot about trying to come up with next steps on how to convey that idea and how to integrate the idea of portals into my artwork and into my art practice. I've been trying to figure out what is meant by that, and also what are the next steps for me to popularize this idea and to really make it inherent into my artworks. But for that, we need to take a look at this from a more, let's say, real-world point of view. And I would like to use the example that we usually don't think as artworks, but they certainly are, which is advertising. Whenever you're scrolling on your feed, for example, or when you used to watch advertisements, those advertisements, whatever kind of format they use, they are meant to be portals. Sometimes they are portals of a more, let's say, lower area of human work, although I have a lot of appreciation for advertising since I studied it in school and I do it every day. I think they, even when they're in the lower forms of human interaction, that is, buy this product, or I want you to buy this, so I'll create an image, for example, an image that will, or a jingle if it's in music, that will entice you to purchase that product. Even on those areas, those images, those artworks, they are portals because they are trying to take you into a journey into that world that the advertiser is trying to give you. And I try not to take a very cynical view of that because we are all selling things, and I believe very profoundly that trade is one of the most beautiful and compassionate and amazing ideas in humanity. Because when I have some sort of wealth and I don't want to kill you and get yours, when we trade, we start figuring out the value of things. And I think that's a fantastic and amazing thing. So I don't want to poo-poo the idea of advertising, as many people, especially in the arts, try to do. I think it has its place, and also it's very much related to this idea that from Carl Sagan, that when you are in love, you want to tell the world. So when you are in love with, for example, I get in love with this like ethnic fashion elements in ancient history and beauty and all these things. And I want to share that with people. And if you don't have a mechanism to create this, let's say, advertising portals to give the chance to people to fall in love with the things that you love, I think you are depriving them from actually going and looking and learning all those things. So anyway, I am trying to really think deeply about this idea of portals, but from a more practical point of view, I'm also thinking of how that concept can be sometimes even literally manifested in the world. And it has been inspired actually by this podcast. I had this idea a few months ago when I saw this app. It was like an application that you could basically point your phone. It was like a QR code, but it basically sees an artwork and it sort of like scans and analyzes and sees, oh, okay, this is a photo by Pedro. And then it takes you to a website that has some information about that artwork. These kinds of apps are being developed for museums, and I think that's quite fascinating because it will be able to take you on a history, a journey, a portal, if you will, on those artworks. Right now, the way that they're set up, they are sort of like, it's basically a hyperlink to an article from either a art historian or someone that is actually talking a little bit about that artwork. But I was thinking, what if you could, for example, with your phone or your computer or whatever, you would just point to an artwork? And what kind of other artworks and what kind of other behind the scenes and thoughts about it, and the artists talking to you about that artwork and how that could live throughout time. So let's say the way that I envisioned it was I create a photograph and I document all the process of creating that photograph to a certain extent, and my current views on that artwork or artworks that were created after that one and how it concatenates. So you have and you could even include the commentary of people that have enjoyed that artwork over time. So you could have this rich experience related to the artwork, but that would outlast the artist. And let's say I do a photograph and then I have all these artworks that created after that and before that, and you could see me creating it, for example, and then you could see the people that have commented on it or that even remixed that artwork. And it could be all helped by this technological advance of hyperlinking, right? And the convenience of having it on your phone, on your pocket. And how could that influence the way that certain artworks are experienced once you create like virtual reality things, which is not that hard to do these days. We're still a little bit away from it from the point of view of how to do it in a consistent basis, but technologically certainly possible. So I thought of artworks being this sort of like meta reality, not only in our minds and spirits, but also with the aggregation of content that can come using these apps, using these technologies, so that we can experience art in a different way. So in that way, the portal becomes another portal and then becomes another portal, which is basically the idea of art being recreated. It has all happened before and it will all happen again, as they talked about in, I believe that comes from Peter Pan, if I'm not mistaken, but I remember from Battlestar Galactica, another reference for Battlestar Galactica. But anyway, I know it's a little bit all over the place, this episode. I am actually today walking around my house and doing some errands, so I decided to just talk to you about this thing that I was thinking before yesterday and today. And in terms of practicality, if you are an artist, try to think of the artworks that inspire you, that you have around your house, that they were telling you something and there is an action assigned to it, embedded there somewhere. And for the people that are enjoying artworks, it's try to take a look at the things that have your attention, try to see why you like that kind of thing. Not in terms of analyzing, but in terms of what kind of ideas and what kind of emotions and what kind of deep transformation that artwork is trying to do. And then for everyone, also this understanding that whenever you're scrolling through your feed on your phone or in your computer and social media and anything that you get in contact with, it is always going to be a sort of call to adventure. It's always going to be a sort of portal. So you have to look at them and see if that invitation is for you, if it is something that will enhance your life, or if that is something that will steal time from you by people that basically want to use you for their own means. So with that, I will talk to you tomorrow, and I hope you found this interesting, and send me a note if there is any subjects you'd like me to talk about in the future.